Come on, Piglet.
Oh, no.
What was I
Hello, Pooh Bear.
The Book of Pooh led to a trend going forward with the rest of the shows, since once it aired, Winnie the Pooh started to aim its animated lineup towards a preschool audience. Sure, Welcome to Pooh Corner existed prior to this, and New Adventures' prime demographic was kids, but the shows coming up feel more like the focus was less on universal appeal and instead aimed strictly at a young demographic, which isn't super terrible, since even earlier on, Winnie the Pooh had specials and games with that said demographic in mind. Plus, there's already a lot of Winnie the Pooh stuff with all audiences in mind, like with the spin-off movies. Okay, enough build-up, let's discuss 2007's My Friend Tigger and Pooh, the first Winnie the Pooh series to be fully animated in CGI, which unfortunately hasn't aged the greatest looking back, but they still translated the characters decently well. Also, Tigger Fortnite dances.
You do a rain dance when you want rain, so you do a grow dance when you want something to grow.
Since Disney is partnering with Fortnite, the fact that this being in it is a real possibility is scary to think about. This show shook up the Pooh formula in a number of ways. First off, instead of Christopher Robin, we have Darby and her dog Buster. Then we have the biggest change of turning her, Tigger, and Pooh into super sleuths, who exist to solve simple mysteries around the 100-acre wood, which mostly involves helping out a character. So one of my closest friends and Simone brought this up to me, so I feel like it was important to bring it up here. But the title, My Friends Tigger and Pooh, is an insult! I get it, Tigger and Pooh hang out with Darby the most due to being super sleuths, but look at this poster! Piglet's right here, and you're just gonna diss him like that? What about Eeyore and Rabbit? Why is this title picking favorites? The show's format is similar to stuff like Mickey Mouse Clubhouse or Blue's Clues, but what's odd is that they don't go all out with it. Normally with these types of shows, every character interacts with the viewer and talks directly to them. Well here, Darby is the only one who does this. And when she does, it's normally not that often, though they do have Darby talk to the viewers at the end credits and play a game with reused animation, typically from the episode. The only instance where somebody else other than Darby talks to the audience is when the 100-acre wood threw a surprise party, because they don't want a bunch of 3-year-olds shouting at Darby about the surprise. There's also a repeating song in each episode. For instance, when Winnie or another character says the iconic phrase, think, 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 they always have a song to accompany it. Then later on in around season 2, I believe, they introduced a song called Who, What, When, Where, Why, or How. But in the episodes I've seen, they only played one of these two songs. There wasn't an instance where they played both of them, and unless it's for a quick gag, they normally don't play it more than once. When I was first watching this show, I was honestly really upset with the format change. It felt like they were fixing something that isn't broken by adding an artificial new element to the show. In some regard, I do believe that the new elements take away from the experience that the other shows had, and due to this, it can get awfully repetitive to rewatch. The same thing can be said about Welcome to Pooh Corner and the Book of Pooh, but with those, it's either not as long or easily skippable. While here, the repeating elements, like the songs and the Super Sleuth Oath, happen each episode, and even though they're short, it did get on my nerves a bit when binge watching the show. When talking about New Adventures, I said it was pretty zany. It might even be the zaniest show out of all of them. With that being said, the stories in Tigger and Pooh can get pretty nuts. Almost to the point where they don't feel like Pooh Bear stories anymore. Most of them are very down to earth, and most mystical elements are a figment of the character's imagination. But every now and again, they have a premise that's batshit insane, such as Darby becoming a giant. The movie trilogy is probably the best example of stories that feel too out there for Winnie the Pooh, such as the gang meeting Santa in the Holiday movie, and one where a meteor hits Rabbit's garden, giving the super sleuths superpowers. Oh, and the Christmas movie proves my point as to why My Friends Tigger and Pooh is an insulting title. because when heading to the North Pole, Darby sings a song about how all of them are going to the North Pole, and she only brings up her, Tigger, and Pooh when everyone else is joining them on the adventure. Darby, you are a f***ing narcissist. However, other than the negatives that I just mentioned, it's hard to say that this doesn't feel like Winnie the Pooh. The characters still feel like themselves and work off of this new premise just fine. They even added quite a bit of new characters in the mix as well. The most noticeable one is definitely Darby and Buster, since she isn't a one-off character. If anything, she's probably more of a main character than Pooh Bear himself. She's basically a tomboy type character and is the main guardian of Pooh and his friends while Christopher Robin is at school. Though it's never revealed what Darby's relationship with Christopher is. Is she his friend, his younger sister, even a cousin? Christopher only makes 2 appearances in the entire show, and this fact is never explained. I think there's a lot of untapped potential with Darby that unfortunately wasn't explored in this show. Cause the whole time watching this series, I kept thinking to myself, how did Darby meet Christopher? How was she introduced to Pooh and friends? What made Chris patch the torch to Darby when he's away? There wasn't any form of origin stories in the episodes I've watched, and when I look up Darby origin story, nothing pops up. So if there's any lore relating to Darby that you guys know that I don't, please comment below, because I am very curious. As is, she's fine. She never got on my nerves and bounced off the rest of the characters pretty organically, so her inclusion in the show isn't bothersome at all. Also, Buster is just a dog. Not much to say on him other than that he's voiced by D. Bradley Baker. The main reason why I bring this up is because the only dog I know that he plays is Happy from the Mighty Bee. And hearing his performance on both Happy and Buster was legit impressive, since they don't sound like the same dog. They have different inflections, and it's very cool to see D. Bradley Baker perform 2 different dogs with 2 different voices. Speaking of voice acting, Darby's VA, Chloe Grace Moretz, later voiced Nimona. I watched the film when Netflix uploaded it to YouTube, and it's an amazing film and I encourage everyone to watch it. Chloe's performance as Nimona was so good that I flat out forgot throughout most of the viewing that she voiced Darbuddy. Also, Darby has a different voice in the UK. I swear the US has some sort of stigma with British accents. But if Peppa and Bluey are anything to go by, times have changed for the better.
Yeah, it's getting kind of late. Well, we've talked to a lot of our friends, and nobody's seen Eeyore's tail.
They also introduced a few minor characters, such as Porcupine, Turtle, Beaver, and Woodpecker. Porcupine is probably my favorite new character, since she fits in with the original character super well. Turtle has some interesting episodes, and his western vibe gives him a bit of a charm. Beaver honestly feels like they wanted a Gopher type character, but didn't want to include Gopher himself. Is Gopher the Scrappy Doo of the Winnie the Pooh franchise? Is there a non-spoken rule to never include him? Woodpecker is just there, I guess. I don't love him or hate him. He's just the one that talks fast. My least favorite addition in the lineup has to be Skunk. Don't get me wrong, he's a sweet character and has a charm to him. I just hate his debut episode, because the Super Sleuths are trying to help him become stinky, which leads to a ton of gross out, which is something I wish the PCU, Pooh Cinematic Universe, didn't touch with a 10-foot pole. His second major appearance is Beaver being racist against him, which is better solely for that sentence I just said. There's also the Possum Twins. They're just there. They also met a reindeer in the Christmas movie that shows up from time to time. They also bring back Lumpy from Pooh's Heffalump movie. I loved Lumpy in that movie, I love him in this show, and I love his relationship with Roo. I am so glad the franchise eventually gave Roo a friend to play with around his age other than Dexter. Speaking of Dexter, Owl flat out doesn't make an appearance in this entire show. I'm a little upset that they introduced so many new characters to make the woods feel alive, but they left him out. Hashtag justice for Owl. A character I almost forgot to include is Small. He's just a bug. Maybe it would have been better if I just left him out. I almost forgot to include this, but there's some reused episode ideas in this series, just like with the Book of Pooh. For instance, we have another character not eating due to being a picky bitch story, with Beaver being the bitch this time. We have the Tigger and Pigger switcheroo, which is the second time they've done this personality swap between Tigger and Piglet in this marathon, and the fourth time overall since Pooh Corner and New Adventures also had a switching places episode. The Book of Pooh also had an episode where Tigger and Rabbit divided the woods, and Tigger and Pooh and the Musical 2 is literally just a movie-length version of said episode. I can't say I fully enjoy this show, but it's hard to hate something this harmless. This show simply isn't made with adults in mind, and that's okay. It's honestly a fine show for kids, but for anyone older, it's simply just average.
Coming up next, Sab embarks on an amazing playdate with Winnie the Pooh.